Okay, so let's talk pirates. I want you to forget everything you think you know. Forget the talking parrots, the treasure maps, all of it. Because the true story of the golden age of piracy is way more interesting. It's not a fantasy, it was a full-blown rebellion.
I am a free prince. Just listen to those words. That's Black Sam Bellamy, one of the most successful pirates of his time. He didn't see himself as some common thief. No, he saw himself as a revolutionary, waging his own war against the kings and brutal captains of the world. And you know what? He was not alone in thinking that.
So that begs the question, right? Were these guys just bloodthirsty criminals out for gold, or was there something else going on? Something more organized, more radical, driving this whole explosive chapter in history?
To find the answer, we have to look past the Hollywood version of things. The real story isn't buried in some treasure chest. It's right there in the harsh realities that actually created the pirate. This is a story about rebellion.
We picture this total chaos, right? Men swinging from ropes, total mayhem. But the reality? It was the complete opposite. For this one brief, shining moment in time, pirate crews created one of the most organized and, dare I say, equal societies anywhere on the planet. And they did it on these little floating wooden fortresses.
Now, this golden age of piracy didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was a perfect storm, really. A very specific set of circumstances came together that basically unleashed this massive rebellion across the high seas.
You know, we call it an age, but it was shockingly short. The part everyone thinks of, the time of Blackbeard, Calico Jack, all those legends, that lasted for barely more than a decade. The spark that lit the fuse? A big European war ended in 1713. Suddenly, you had thousands of highly skilled, battle-tested sailors with no jobs and no money. They were desperate.
Okay, so put yourself in their shoes for a second. The choice wasn't really between being a good guy and a bad guy. It was a choice between life on a Navy ship, where you got paid almost nothing, the food was rotten, and you could be whipped for looking at the captain wrong, and a short, free life of rebellion where you actually got a vote and a fair share of any prize. Honestly, which one would you pick?
So once they escaped that tyranny, these sailors were not about to recreate it. Instead, they built something completely radical on their ships. They built a floating democracy that, in a lot of ways, was centuries ahead of its time.
And the foundation for this whole new society was the Pirate Code, or as they called it, the Articles. Before they'd set sail, the entire crew would write up this contract and agree to it. It laid out all the rules, everyone's rights, and how the loot would be divided. So forget that image of a captain ruling with an iron fist. On a pirate ship, the power came from the crew.
I mean, this system was just unheard of anywhere else in the world. The captain, he was elected, and if he was a coward or a jerk, they could just vote him out. Simple as that. They also elected another guy, the quartermaster, to handle the day-to-day discipline and make sure the loot was split up fairly. On a Navy ship, the captain was basically a god. Here, he had to answer to his men. It was absolutely revolutionary.
And get this is probably my favorite part. Their pirate code had one of the world's first forms of workers' comp. If you lost an arm in battle, or a leg, or even just an eye, you were guaranteed a huge payout from the shared treasure before anyone else got their share. It was a social safety net, right there on the high seas. Incredible.
So, you have these floating democracies. But how did they handle the, pirating part? You'd think their biggest weapon was the cannon, right? Wrong. It was fear. A real fight was actually bad for business. It could damage the ship they were trying to capture, the cargo, and most importantly, their own crew.
That famous Jolly Roger flag, the skull and crossbones, it wasn't just a scary decoration. It was a business card. It was a carefully designed brand, meant to terrify other ships so badly that they'd just give up without a single cannon shot being fired. That meant a nice, clean, profitable takeover.
And the flags they flew sent a really simple, really terrifying choice. If they raised the black flag, the Jolly Roger, it was basically an offer. Surrender now and we might let you live. But if a ship decided to fight back and the pirates raised a red flag, that meant no quarter, no mercy. The fight was to the death, and everyone on that ship was going to die.
And nobody was better at this theater of terror than Edward Teach.
You know him as Blackbeard. He was a master showman. He would literally weave lit fuses from cannons into his giant beard, so he would appear on deck surrounded by smoke and fire. He looked like a demon straight from hell, and that image alone made surrender feel like the only sane choice.
But let's be real, an experiment this radical was never going to last. These pirates were a massive threat to the profits of global trade, and sooner or later, the big empires were going to strike back. And they did, with overwhelming force.
The end came fast. The Royal Navy started hunting them down without mercy. The king started offering official pardons, which was a brilliant move because it sowed mistrust within the pirate crews. Their main base of operations, the Republic of Pirates in Nassau, was captured, and when legendary leaders like Blackbeard were killed, the whole network just sort of collapsed. The Golden Age was over.
But even though the era was over, it left behind these incredible legends who broke every rule of society. I mean, you had women like Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who fought just as hard, if not harder, than any man on their crew. The story goes that when their ship was finally captured, the men were all drunk below deck, and only Anne and Mary were on deck fighting.
And get this, while we're all focused on the Caribbean, maybe the most successful pirate commander in all of history wasn't a man at all. Her name was Zheng Yisao, a Chinese pirate queen who commanded a fleet of 70,000 pirates. 70,000! She was so powerful that the Chinese Empire couldn't beat her. They literally had to negotiate her retirement, and she got to keep all her loot.
So, it all comes back to that one question, doesn't it? Criminals or rebels? Were they just history's great villains, or were they fighting a desperate war against a cruel and oppressive world? The real answer is probably somewhere in those murky waters in between. Yes, they were thieves, they were killers, but they were also pioneers of democracy and equality on the high seas. And that powerful contradiction, that's why we're still talking about them today.